Hey guys, what's up? Kalamazi here, and this time we're going to be looking at Destruction Warlock on the BFA Alpha. This is a pretty fast run through Atal'Dazar, and I felt I did a pretty good job of displaying the toolkit that Destruction has to offer after some of the changes it's undergone so far in Alpha. These are the talents I chose to run with this time around, and overall I was pretty happy with them. I chose Channel Demon Fire as my 100 talent due to the fact it does have some merit on trash, and it's also very powerful within eradication windows on single target encounters. I wanted to see how Fire and Brimstone felt and what its actual damage was versus something like Cataclysm, which I think still might be better if you're making pretty large trash pulls. The first boss you encounter is named Razan, and it's mostly a single target encounter that can become more of an AoE encounter depending on how well your group plays. He has a few abilities. One's called Terrifying Visage, and it's basically an AoE fear, which needs to be LOS. The pillar to my left here is very easy to LOS it behind, but you can also use Tremor Totems or things of the sort that can dispel fears and make you immune to them for a certain period of time. The bones on the ground here, if you step on them, actually spawn these small raptors that you see here, and this is what can make the fight go from a single target fight to more of an AoE fight. I think this did play a little bit into my damage here, being a little bit higher than I would expect, both having Fire and the Brimstone talent and being able to use Havoc a bit more here. But overall, I thought this was a pretty straightforward encounter. One thing I should mention is that we also were not the target of his pursuit ability at any point during the fight. If you are the target of the pursuit, it does require you to run from him for about 8 or so seconds, which will obviously play into your overall damage on the encounter. Looking at the overall damage for the encounter, we finished first at 3k, followed by the warrior and the tank. Sadly, our third DPS, who is an Affliction Warlock, was locked out of the encounter for this fight. Having multiple targets, being the small dinosaurs, to cleave onto with Havoc and keeping Immolate rolling on them, I think inflated our damage here a good bit. As previously mentioned, not being a target of pursuit and having a good spot to LOS the fear also helps a good bit. The breakdown does show Chaos Bolt being our highest damaging ability, followed by Conflagrate and then our Infernal's Immolation. Incinerate and then Immolate are close behind, and I believe Incinerate is a bit higher than normal due to having Fire and Brimstone and multiple adds active during the encounter. The same could probably also be said for our Infernal's Immolation aura. The Grimoire Supremacy talent, now increasing our Chaos Bolt's damage, helps further boost our Chaos Bolt's damage, and makes it worth saving 4 to 5 shards before summoning our Infernal to quickly stack our increased Chaos Bolt damage buff. Priestess Alunza is the second boss we encounter here, and she has a few abilities that aren't very threatening. The one ability you do need to watch out for is when she casts her Transfusion ability. Normally it'll actually heal her, however if you stand in these pools of red blood on the ground that appear shortly, it gives you a debuff called Tainted Blood. Tainted Blood basically makes it so that when she channels her Transfusion into the player, she deals damage to herself instead of actually healing, which obviously makes the fight much shorter.
You do not belong here! My claws will bind your heart. Corruption be purified! Atal'Dazar's power flows! Wounds must be cleansed.
Taking a look at the damage for Priestess Lunza, we are in first again at 3.3k, which is a good bit over the second place player, which is the Warrior at 2.7k. I do attribute this a bit to the ad that spawns initially at the start of the encounter and giving us a little bit of havoc time, as well as having just a good bit of time to stand still and really stack your Infernal's Chaos Bolt damage buff. It is a pretty stationary fight, and as long as you're able to get relatively close to the tainted blood pools and quickly move into them before she casts her transfusion, there's really not a whole lot of movement involved at all in the fight. Taking a look at the breakdown, it does show Chaos Bolt being our #1 ability by a very large margin, and then Incinerate followed by Channel Demon Fire. I think that this depicts what a mostly single target encounter will break down to much more so than Razan did for Destruction, with Chaos Bolt being a very large contributor, followed by your filler and then Channel Demon Fire. We do see our Imp's Firebolt in 4th, and it being a very close contender to Conflagrate's damage overall. Our Infernal accounted for about 13% of our damage, but I do want to make note that it does not factor in the stacking damage increase it gives to Chaos Bolt while active. While we're here, I do want to mention one specific mob, and that is Zendalaris Skyscreamer. As you can see here, our tank decided to try and pull the entire dungeon, which led to them getting off their cast, which I believe is called Terrifying Screech, and it needs to be interrupted. It is a 6-second AoE fear, and it's very similar to Razan's fear, but it cannot be LOS'd. If that does get off, it makes the pull much more challenging with all the small dinosaurs jumping around doing their AoE damage here as well, so it's very important to get that interrupted. Volcal is the third boss we encounter here, and he's basically immune to damage until we kill the 3 reanimation totems around him. Destruction Warlock really shines here, is able to quickly build shards and then toss out Havoc on one and destroy 2 of them at the same time. Once all 3 are dead, he truly becomes active, and it's just a DPS race before he covers all of the floor in the room with these small green pools you'll see here in a moment.
You die with me! Master, gonna build me again.
We did end up first overall here again, however I do attribute a large portion of that to our use of Havoc in the first phase. The Warrior finished second here, and it's worth noting that his execute damage is very valuable and most certainly will be on higher tyrannical keys, as it really becomes a much more intense DPS race the higher you go and the more health that Volcal actually has. Our damage breakdown is a bit skewed here due to the use of Havoc basically at the start of the fight. We see Chaos Bolt in first, with Conflagrate actually being second, and then Incinerate in third. Channel Demon Fire is close behind Incinerate in fourth, simply due to the fact that we aren't really able to cleave here with it at all, nor is it usable with Havoc. Our Infernal accounted for about 13% of our overall damage, which is very similar to the previous encounter as well, so that's always good to see. Yasma is the final boss in the dungeon, and the main ability you need to watch out here is called Soul Rend. You can see I placed a portal, or I guess a gateway before the encounter started, and you can see the first Soul Rend goes out right here. You need to get far away from the group here. After a few seconds, you drop an, or you spawn an ad, which needs to be killed as soon as possible. Destruction shines here a good bit, as you can Shadow Fury the ad, but you can also Havoc the ad and the boss at the same time, which provides a tremendous amount of damage. We finished second on Yasma, which was a bit surprising taking into consideration how good Havoc is here. I would imagine on higher difficulties the ads will live longer, which in return will give us higher Havoc damage windows. Having access to the demonic gateway here is very nice for both you and other members of your group, as it's a great way to get out with Soul Rend, or just use it to get out of trouble, as you saw me do there. Our breakdown does look pretty similar to the second boss, however we do see that Channel Demon Fire is a bit lower here. I do attribute that to the fight having a bit of movement. You're not really able to predict the movement as well, which makes it a bit harder to channel the actual ability. You might also notice here that we do not have Infernal listed here, and that's due to the fact that it was actually just simply on cooldown from the previous encounter at the start of the fight. When he did come off cooldown, I was targeted by Soul Rend and then had to rest the tank, which led to me actually being able to summon him near the very end of the fight, and at that point it pretty much just wasn't worth it. If we had him at the start of the encounter, I would imagine that he probably would have finished a good bit higher, potentially even in first. Here's the final trash damage from the run. As I mentioned a bit ago, our tank was very keen on making massive pulls and only massive pulls, which greatly inflated his numbers, but it's still something to take note of regardless. The warrior did beat us overall on trash a good bit, and I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed in Fire and Brimstone here. While we can attribute the warrior and druid's damage being inflated a bit due to the massive trash pulls, we also had a good bit of AoE and just simply were not able to compete. I do believe that I could have used my Infernal once or twice on trash, and its Immolation Aura would have been a massive DPS increase, but I did not want to risk it being on CD for the boss. Here's the final trash breakdown, and we do see Incinerate as number 1 due to Fire and Brimstone. I feel that this run could be a tad misleading and would have to run with Fire and Brimstone a few more times, but I feel its 60% damage reduction to targets surrounding your main target just might be a bit too much. Rain of Fire is in second, and the good thing about having Fire and Brimstone is that you're always swimming in shards, which leads to pretty much always having Rain of Fire rolling. Chaos Bolt is in third. I would imagine a large portion of its trash damage actually during Havoc windows, and Channel Demon Fire is in fourth. As I mentioned previously, was chosen due to having some merit on trash. The fact of the matter is that when you have Fire and Brimstone, you really don't need Soul Conduit, as you're just swimming in shards anyways. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll have a link to the logs from this run and my talents in the description below if you want an even more in-depth look. Let me know what you thought of this run and how you think Destro looks in the comments below. Also let me know of any new builds or classes or guides that you'd like to see in general. If you're looking for an in-depth dungeon guide for Atal'Dazar, check my dungeon guide section of the channel as it's posted there. If you want to see more BFA and Warcraft content, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons as I release new content every 2 to 3 days, and your support really helps. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you in battle for Azeroth. Peace.